History is built on stories. Stories of triumph, of defeat, of discovery. But sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones with no ending. They are the mysteries, the blank pages in our collective memory that haunt us with their silence. And in the very first chapter of the American story, there is the greatest silence of all. It is the story of a place called Roanoke, a story of 117 men, women, and children who sought to build a new world, and instead vanished into it, leaving behind only a ghost story and a single cryptic word carved into a tree. This is not just a tale of a lost colony. It is a story of hope, of desperation, and a profound mystery that has endured for over 400 years, a mystery that began with a dream. The dream belonged to Sir Walter Raleigh, a favorite of Queen Elizabeth I. In the late 16th century, England was a nation with ambitions. It watched with envy as Spain grew fabulously wealthy from its vast empire in the New World. Raleigh envisioned an English foothold in North America, a permanent settlement that would serve as a base for privateering against Spanish treasure fleets and a source of new resources. It was a vision of empire, of profit, and of glory. After a failed initial attempt, a second, more ambitious expedition was launched in 1587. This was different. This was not just a military outpost of soldiers. This time they would send families. 117 men, women, and children, led by Governor John White, an artist and cartographer who had been on the previous expedition. Their mission was to build a permanent English settlement, the city of Raleigh, not on the exposed coast of Roanoke, but further north in the more sheltered Chesapeake Bay. But from the very beginning, things went wrong. The fleet's pilot, Simon Fernandez, was a man in a hurry. Eager to get back to the Atlantic to hunt for Spanish ships, he refused to take the colonists to their intended destination in the Chesapeake. Against their protests, he forced them ashore on the one place they wanted to avoid, the desolate, sandy island of Roanoke, the site of the previous failed colony. It was a poor start, but they were determined to make it work. They repaired the abandoned huts left by the first expedition and tried to re-establish relations with the local Native American tribes. But the atmosphere was tense. The English had a history of violence with some of the local tribes, and trust was in short supply. Yet, amidst this uncertainty, there was a moment of profound hope. On August 18, 1587, Governor John White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia. She was the first English child born in the New World. She was a symbol of a new beginning, the embodiment of their dream. But their supplies were running low. The season was too late for a successful harvest. They knew they would not survive the coming winter without help from England. The colonists made a desperate decision. They pleaded with their governor, John White, to sail back to England and return as quickly as possible with more people and supplies. This was an impossible choice for John White. It meant leaving his daughter, Eleanor, and his newborn granddaughter, Virginia, in this dangerous and isolated place. He refused. He wrote in his journal, "I was very loath to depart from them." But the colonists insisted. He was the only one they trusted to make the journey and ensure their survival. With a heavy heart, he finally agreed. At the end of August 1587, just 9 days after the birth of his granddaughter, John White sailed for England. As the shores of Roanoke faded into the distance, He had no way of knowing that he would never see his family or any of the colonists ever again. The journey back to England was fraught with difficulty, but what he found when he arrived was even worse. His timing could not have been more catastrophic. England was on the brink of war with the most powerful nation on earth, Spain. The Spanish Armada was preparing to invade. Queen Elizabeth commanded that every available ship be used for the defense of the realm. No ship could be spared for a supply run to a tiny, insignificant colony on the other side of the world. For 3 agonizing years, John White was trapped in England, a helpless spectator to history, haunted by the thought of his family and friends starving on that distant shore. He tried desperately to organize a relief mission, but every attempt was thwarted by war, bureaucracy, and bad luck. Finally, in 1590, 3 long years after he had left, he managed to secure passage on a privateering expedition that agreed to stop at Roanoke. On August 18th, his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, he finally saw the island again. As they approached the settlement, a column of smoke was rising from the woods. White's heart soared with hope. He ordered his men to play English folk songs on a trumpet to let the colonists know that help had finally arrived. But as they landed and walked towards the settlement, an eerie silence fell. The smoke was from a simple forest fire, not a cooking hearth. The settlement was gone. The scene was one of profound and unsettling emptiness. The houses had been carefully dismantled, not burned or destroyed. The area was enclosed by a strong palisade, a defensive wall of logs, suggesting they had not been taken by surprise. There were no signs of a battle. No bodies, no bones, nothing to suggest a struggle or a massacre. It was as if the entire colony had simply packed up and moved on. White and his men searched frantically for a sign, any clue to their whereabouts. Before he had left 3 years earlier, he had arranged a secret token with the colonists. If they were forced to leave, they were to carve their destination into a tree. If they were in distress, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the name. And then he found it. Carved deep into a large post at the entrance of the palisade was a single cryptic word in capital letters, CROATOAN. There was no Maltese cross. CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island, now known as Hatteras Island, and the name of the friendly Native American tribe that inhabited it. For John White, this was a moment of immense relief. It was not a sign of distress. It was a clear message. We have gone to live with the Croatan people. He wanted to sail to CROATOAN immediately, but a great storm was brewing. The ship's captain, having already lost several anchors, refused to risk his vessel in the dangerous shallow waters. He'd promised to try again in the spring, but he never did. The privateering vessel sailed away, and John White, heartbroken, was forced to return to England. He would never have the funds to mount another expedition. He died years later, never knowing for certain the fate of his daughter, his granddaughter, and the lost colony of Roanoke. So what happened to the 117 colonists? The clue they left behind seems to offer the simplest and most logical explanation. This is the assimilation theory. Facing starvation and the failure of their supply ship to return, the colonists chose to seek help from the one person they knew they could trust, Manteo, a chief of the Croatan tribe who had traveled to England and was a firm ally of the English. It's believed the colonists, perhaps over a period of time, moved to CROATOAN Island and were gradually and peacefully absorbed into the tribe. This would explain the lack of a struggle and the carefully dismantled houses, which they may have taken with them for the timber. There is tantalizing evidence to support this. Generations later, European explorers who encountered the Croatan people noted that some tribe members had gray eyes and a surprising familiarity with the English language and customs. Modern archaeological work, the CROATOAN project, has found a significant number of 16th century English artifacts on Hatteras Island, far more than can be explained by a signet ring belonging to one of the original colonists was found there. It suggests an English presence, but it is not definitive proof of the entire colony's relocation. But there is a darker possibility. This is the massacre theory. While the Croatan were friendly, other tribes in the region were not. The Spanish, who had a settlement in Florida, saw the English colony as a threat to their interests in the New World. Did a Spanish raiding party sail north and annihilate the colony? It's possible, but there is no record of such an attack in the Spanish archives. A more likely culprit, if a massacre occurred, would be another Native American tribe. John White himself had noted the hostility of the Powhatan Confederacy, a powerful group of tribes who lived in the Chesapeake Bay area, the colonists' original destination. Later English settlers at Jamestown heard stories from Chief Powhatan himself that he had been responsible for the slaughter of the Roanoke colonists. Was this a boast, an attempt to intimidate the new English arrivals? Or was it a confession? A massacre would explain the disappearance, but it doesn't fit with the evidence found at the site. The lack of bodies and the carefully dismantled settlement do not point to a violent surprise attack. A third theory offers a more desperate picture. What if the CROATOAN carving was not a destination, but a plan that failed? This theory suggests that the colonists, starving and desperate, attempted to sail to Croatoan Island themselves, using a small boat left with them. But a storm, common in that area, could have swamped their vessel, drowning them all at sea. Or perhaps the carving was just the first part of a longer journey. The colonists may have moved to Croatoan for a time, and then, still struggling, attempted to move further inland into the vast, unknown interior of the continent, where they eventually perished from disease or conflict, their final resting place lost to the wilderness forever. The fate of the Lost Colony of Roanoke remains a mystery because all of these theories are plausible, yet none of them are proven. The story has become a foundational American myth, a ghost story that speaks to the profound anxieties of the colonial experience. The fear of the unknown wilderness, the fear of losing one's identity, the fear of simply disappearing. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World, became a powerful symbol. In the centuries that followed, she was transformed in folklore into a mythical white doe, a ghostly figure who still roams the island. The 117 colonists who vanished from that sandy shore left behind a void. They were the first seeds of a nation, planted in the soil of a new world, only to be swallowed by it. And their story, an unsettling tale with no final chapter, continues to haunt the American imagination, a permanent reminder that the line between a new beginning and a silent, lonely end can be terrifying.